Ya.
Bandara KK ni.
Alright.
Marilah datang beramai-ramai untuk kita sama-sama menyaksikan pelepasan pelumba-pelumba untuk perlumbaan pada pagi ini yang kita adakan, itu Resort World Cup Kota Kinabalu 2020 Malaysia International Criterium Race right here 8:30 in the morning, and we have our beloved Chief Minister of Sabah is going to flag off all the riders this morning, insyaAllah.
Baik, pasukan yang sedang menyusuri masuk daripada negara kita Malaysia yang akan diparisi pelumba-pelumba daripada anak Malaysia dan juga seorang pelumba daripada Turki yang akan menyusuri masuk berserba biru. Daripada pasukan tim Sapura Cycling.
Ini adalah salah satu pasukan yang cukup hebat, pasukan kontinental daripada Malaysia yang semenjak kemunculannya seringkali membawa kemenangan.
Ya, betul.
Ini pun banyak, dia ada barisan pelumba-pelumba yang lain, tapi kali ini untuk Petronas untuk dilangkaui ini segera boleh ini barisan yang lain juga dipertaruhkan bagi memenangi perlumbaan pada kali ini. Kita ada
kita ada Muhammad Zawawi
Azman, Ahmad Orkan, Akmal Hakim Zakaria.
Ya. Dan seterusnya Muhammad Sahari Amri, dan seterusnya itu Muhsin Al-Reza, Muhammad Nur Aiman.
Itu dia pelumba-pelumba daripada Sapura Cycling Team pula.
Pelumba-pelumba daripada pasukan Sapura ini cukup menariknya, di mana mereka, director mereka, assistant director, squad director mereka adalah pelumba-pelumba daripada bekas pelumba negara kita Malaysia, iaitu Sayyid Zaid dan juga Mahal di KK di Kota Kinabalu. Baik, pasukan yang seterusnya Vino Astana Moto daripada Kazakhstan.
Okey, kita ada 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tim lagi. Kita ada 6 pasukan lagi yang belum mendaftarkan diri untuk mendaftarkan. Di memang buat kita ada badan ini belum lagi di Zamu, dan hotel, mendaftar, Kim Rishlane, St. John's Continental Cycling Team. Okay, these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 teams. This is Miriam Aslan. Mereka adalah pasukan yang diberi
Shono.
Malaysia untuk baju dirangkawi termasuk pada tahun ini Petronas baju dirangkawi edisi yang kedua kali.
Thank you very much.
Send off.
Good luck. Have fun. Enjoy the race. Dan satu lagi ya. Last but not least, kita ada Bardiani Siasat Faizan.
Kawasan ni
Wadah
sampai
dua.
Halo, Bu. Ya. Auto ya? Dah, aku dah tolak auto dah. Sekejap aku tinggal sekarang. Sekejap lagi. Sekarang tengah ni. Aku tak dengar. Itu kau tak dengar. Aha. Apa yang driver aku sapu dia Alright.
Okay, guys, are you ready? Hari ini kita ada persembahan daripada sebuah band yang cukup terkenal kerana band ini telah menulis lagu baru untuk tak tahu. Itu pun Visit Malaysia year 2020 on
Visit Malaysia.
okay, don't forget to visit Criterium also.
Visit Truly Asia, Malaysia 2020. Baik, kita masih menunggu syarat-syarat daripada Tuan Sekalian dengan pihak teknikal, daripada Chief Kota dan juga daripada pihak PDRM Polis Diraja Malaysia untuk kita akan melepaskan para peserta 117 berlupa kesemuanya 20 pasukan dibansi di Criterium kali ini ataupun di Resort World Genting Kota Kinabalu 2020 Malaysia International Race pada hari ini. Jadi kita nantikan sebentar lagi 117 berlupa kesemuanya. Ini yang mana ada bendera Petronas dan juga Visit Truly Asia Malaysia 2020 boleh tiba-tibakan.
Tapi saya
Nanti
lain
kita
tu
tengok
kan.
rakan-rakan ataupun warga Sabah di Kota Kinabalu yang meminati sukan lumba basikal, di mana pasukan-pasukan lumba-lumba yang cukup ternama yang turut serta pada kali ini.
Bang. Saya punya
Okay guys, are you
fokus kau semua okey
ready? Kota Kinabalu.
Okey.
Yes.
Putih Putih, sekejap. Dinding. Sekejap Okey bang. Okey. Boleh? Sekejap Alright, okay. Alright. Ada juga ni ni je okay. Gelap bang. Okay. Kalau saya punya viewfinder sekarang ni nak okey dekat sini. Ni, yang ni terus sikit je okey. Faham.
Bagi undang-undang di mana pada pagi ini cara aluan sejauh
bar lebih daripada kita punya barricade. Okay, you can
yang selalu akan ke kiri dan ke kanan. Kali ini
sokongan kerjasama yang jitu dan padu yang diberikan kepada Tuan Voyage untuk menjalankan rekan-rekan perubahan edisi 25 Petronas Nasional kali ini.
yang cukup betul rumus untuk kita adakan loteri Langkawi 2020 atau Petronas loteri Langkawi 2020 ini edisi ke-25. Tuan kita Syah yang betul rumus sehingga hari ini Criterium diadakan di Kota Kinabalu. Ya.
Test ni band bahasa Melayu,
Ya.
Okey,
Itu sendiri yang cukup memberi support dan juga betul rumus untuk mengadakan acara Criterium ataupun Resort World Genting Kota Kinabalu 2020 ataupun 2020 Malaysia International Criterium Race. Jadi Sabah
Ketua Menteri Yang Berhormat Tun Jin Z, Menteri Belia dan Sukan Sabah. Lama nak buat, sekarang dah tak boleh sejam, dia sudah tersedia.
At the moment I can't hear my voice. I'm hoping that when we are live I can hear my voice because it's very difficult at the moment. So I can't hear my voice. If you can hear me, I can't hear my voice.
Boleh. Nanti jangan lupa ambil je. Nak kita buat balik. Dekat Criterium ada kelas. Memang ada kelas. Cuba dengar apa people who are quite keen doing cycling. I think this is something that's really good. We must encourage that. Well, I think it is indeed, yeah. You don't have to worry about all the toxic diesel. Cycling is indeed very important for us.
Okay, thank you very much, Dato Sri, for all the good ones that you have supported for this Petronas. Saat 20 seconds. We're gonna count down together. We're gonna count down together. Okay, orang-orang Sabah, boleh tak kita count down sama-sama?
Ayo sama.
Boleh tak kita count down sama-sama, okay? Are you ready? 8, 7, 6 seconds. 5, 4,
3, 2, 1.
Live coverage.
and you have watched. Petronas Ketua Langkawi 2020 untuk menyampaikan sedikit cenderahati kepada Yang Amat Berhormat Dato' Seri Panglima Haji Muhammad Syafiq bin Haji Abdul, Ketua Menteri Sabah, kerana studi bersama-sama kita pada hari ini untuk berpasang berkumpul dan mengizinkan kita berada di sini untuk race criterium kita. Kita bagi lampu hijau untuk masuk, okey?
Across the world.
Thank you very
Racing down
much.
under in New Zealand and Australia. Training in the warm weather bases.
Thank you very much, Dato' Seri Panglima.
Canary Islands,
Okay.
Mallorca, southern climes of Mediterranean. And some of these Asian teams as well, represented by many of them here. China, Japan, 2 teams represented. These teams from Thailand, Indonesia and Malaysia. And these teams, most of the riders making their seasonal debut here at Victoria. Temperature, well, at the moment, bear in mind it's only 8 to 30 in the morning in Kota, Kinabalu. It's a 30 to 40 degrees in temperature for the next 2 hours of racing along the rise. Barely any wind though.
Okay.
Strongly this
Usai.
Ya saya.
Sekarang kita nak over shoot dah, okay?
Okey, boleh. Tinggi ya ini. Dia ada Cik Ibrahim kita kat sini. Orang kuat KBS.
So waiting for the first attacks to start of the race. breakaway hasn't yet begun. So the attack's continuing to come. Decent little prize available on offer at the finish line in terms of cash incentive as well. A few €100 going to the winner, or dollars, or pounds, or whichever way you want to calibrate your earnings. Malaysian ringgit is the currency in question here, of course. And there's also a cash prize, 3,500 ringgit, in fact, to the best placed Asian team. The Asian teams represented. So, Hong Kong with the blue kit, the dark and light blue, and the white helmets. The rider from ARA Cycling Academy, the Australian continental team based in Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast. Part of a 6-7 rider group who are just trying to chase across, but committed effort from the rider there from Hong Kong, who looks over his shoulder and sees where the next move is coming from. And it's one of the bigger teams represented here, Vini Zabu KTM, formerly known as Vini Fantini, of course. They've sent a rider to the front in that yellow kit with the dark blue. A lot of the better known teams as well changing their kits over the winter, and there's always a bit of a process of getting used to the way that the new kits look. Bardiani CSF, who are represented in this race, of course, they've completely changed their colours and they now ride in a predominantly purple or lilac kit. Yet to see any of their riders to the fore, and nor have we seen any of the riders from NTT. Their job will be very much to police the moves, I suspect, rather than place a rider in the breakaway. They have one of the strong favourites to look after today to take the Criterium race, and also a number of stages he'll be eyeing up, I would imagine, as the Tour de Langkawi gets underway tomorrow, and that is the German sprinter Max Walscheid. Just catching a little glimpse of him as he signed on as well. He is a monster, a very, very big, tall, imposing figure indeed. And at the back of the peloton, less stress at the moment. They take a left-hander there either side of those rather unfortunately placed police officers. I don't think they'll be doing that again in a hurry, standing right in the middle of the road there without a significantly bigger flag to wave to indicate their presence. And I think they got away with it, and all the riders got round that obstacle safely. So it looks like 5 riders have gone clear now. We'll wait a while to try and figure out who exactly it is, and looks to me like a chase group of maybe 10 or a dozen or so riders are trying to get across from the front of the peloton. So those two groups, if they come together, could prove a little bit of a headache for the peloton. Perhaps slightly bigger group getting formed on the road than they would hope for. But these 5 have gone clear for now. Difficult to see, I must confess, from that shot exactly who they are. And I wonder if the peloton has decided that that is the right constitution of those riders, and has sat up and allowed them to develop their breakaway advantage. Long way to go. Over 70 kilometres still to go in this race. And they're beginning to work well together. One of the riders, I think, is from the SSIOS Myoji cycling team from China. Now, there was another Chinese team who were going to make the journey over to the Tour de Langkawi, featuring a number of Chinese national riders themselves. And because of the risks attached with the coronavirus, they, about a week ago, decided that they wouldn't be participating in the Tour de Langkawi. Peloton still very active, we're hearing on race radio. And there is a rider from NTT there in the breakaway. Slightly pixelated pictures, hard at the moment to pick out exactly who is in that group from the NTT team. But it's perhaps a surprise, something of a surprise to see a rider in the breakaway. I think it might be Michael Svengard, their Danish rider in the blue kit. Try and get a view of where the peloton is and how actively it's riding. Well, at the back of the peloton it looks a little bit more relaxed, as if they have decided not to race hard to bring that group of 5 back. I must admit, it does look like the right size of breakaway, roughly. And from Team Bridge Lane, Tristan Ward is amongst them. He's in that light blue kit. Blake Quick from the St George Continental team. Now that's something of a surprise, and he's a dangerous man if that breakaway goes to the finish, because he has got a very fast finish. He's in the red kit, a red and black kit, working on the front, the young Australian. One of the favourites, or outside favourites, to take today's stage. But he's decided instead to take his chances in the breakaway. It could succeed, you never know, but it's an unorthodox and slightly surprising move for him. Those two riders then we have managed to identify. And from NTT, it's the under-23 World Road Race champion Samuele Battistella. So it's actually a very powerfully composed breakaway. Managed to pick out 3 of the riders in the break, 2 more as yet to identify. Little glimpse of the, what would you call it, light green colours. It's actually known as Glace, the colours of B&B Hotels, Vital Concepts. Glace being a Breton word from the north of France, Brittany, which describes precisely that colour, which is somewhere between blue and green. Turquoise, I suppose, is the closest English equivalent, and it's the colour of the waters around Brittany. And they bring some very familiar names. You've been watching the Tour de France over recent years, former teammates of Thomas Vauclers in the Europe car team, Pierre Hollande and Cyril Gauthier. They are both in the pack in the peloton. They'll wait, I think, both of those riders until the Genting stage. So there's Samuele Battistella, as I say, the under-23 World Road Race champion, just crowned in Yorkshire last year. A rider from the South Korea team, and Matteo Pelucchi from the Bardiani team. I'd be surprised if he was in that group. I might have missed a rider from Bardiani, but I'm not sure Pelucchi is there, I have to say.
Woo! Ski. Okay.
So we'll wait just a while yet to get confirmation of who those riders are, but a bit of work being done on the front now. By, again, looks like NTT, and that looks like Louis Mankey's riding on the front, the South African climber, which is interesting, working quite hard on the front. Now he's got a teammate in the breakaway. Slightly clearer pictures there. Now that's a chase group, second group on the road, and they are coming together again, and there's another rider from NTT. So there are two groups off the front now, and that's significant. Going to make it very hard to chase and bring back. There are 2 Italian. There's a rider from Vino Zaba. They've got a couple of riders to the front. That's the top front of the peloton that you're looking at now. It continues to be very active indeed. The latest rider working on the front is the Japanese road race champion Shotaro Iribe. And there are 69 kilometres to go. So 7 laps remaining. 2 groups on the road. You're looking at the as yet to be identified second group on the road, just trying to figure out exactly who's in that group, although NTT seem to be represented there as well. 5 riders at the front of the race. Very active for a Criterium race in the opening phases. Long way to go, of course. Still got 68 kilometres to go. So this is the chase group. It looks to be over a dozen riders, but often when you get a group that size, it's difficult to organise exactly who's going to do the work on the front. There are too many passengers, it strikes me, at the moment in that group. Because of the number of riders in it, there is a temptation for some of the riders just to sit on and hide and lurk and not do their work at the front. And eventually, of course, that is going to play to the detriment of this group, because the riders who are working on the front are going to think, well, we're not going to drag these guys who aren't contributing all the way across to the front of the race. Unless they've been caught, but I don't think they have. That looked like it was still the second group on the road. And the 5 at the front, I think, haven't yet been caught by them. You can see them looking there in that chase group, just to try and figure out. There's a couple of teams represented with at least 2 riders in it, including the ARA Australia team from the Sunshine Coast. They have got a couple of riders for sure in the second group, and Drone Jokatali as well. And a couple of riders in conversation now. That looks like it must be Shotaro Iribe from NTT. This is a 2-man group who have just shot off the front of the peloton. We did see Iribe at the front from NTT, working hard, and he has taken with him one of the riders, I think, from Bridge Lane of the Continental team, the Australian team. And those 2 riders, as things stand, might well be the 3rd group on the road. Still not entirely sure whether or not the group of 5 initially have been caught. Haven't seen them on their own for a little while. This is the front of that chase group, but perhaps that is now the front group on the road. Been through the and that's your 12. Try and get you numbers. Very difficult for 2 riders to work front of the peloton. NTT team, and they have been caught now, those 2 riders. So he was joined for company. We finally, just at the minute where he has been caught by Kent Ross from the Wildlife Generation Pro Cycling Team. Those two riders then giving up the ghost. Impossible to get across to that front group of 12, whose advantage I'm hearing on race radio has been cut to something like 20 seconds now. So they are working hard in the peloton to bring them back. And here comes the front of the race now. Through towards the start-finish line. This will be 300 metres to go when they come through for the wide road. The barriers at the side of the road have those feet which stick out into the road, which is not ideal. Looks to me as if one of those riders in that group is a Aisan Racing Team from Japan, with two riders at the front who are doing most of the work to try and bring this back. And well, you can see the advantage for yourself. Now they cross the start-finish line. I think it's probably less than 30 seconds. Still timing between the front of the race now and the peloton. Just two groups. A breakaway group of 16 now, we're having confirmed. And
daripada Malaysia dan juga kelompok-kelompok daripada pasukan bangsin itu daripada Jepun. Jadi sebentar nanti kita akan dipersembahkan bersama dengan band kita yang berada atas pentas bersama dengan drama band dan vokalis mereka Evo. Sebentar nanti akan persembahkan kepada anda beberapa lagu dan yang paling utama lagu edisi yang.
And they've been racing for just under half an hour, so 27 minutes and 50 seconds on the clock. 16 riders at the front, 25 seconds their advantage. So 3 riders, we understand, from NTT represented in that front group. Samuele Battistella, Dylan Sunderland, and Michael Svengard. Izabu, KTM. The Italian Pro Continental team. They've got 2 riders now working on the front, so that's 4 if you add in the 2 riders from the Aisan Racing team. Vini Zabu team have got a former winner of a stage of the Tour de Langkawi, in fact last year, Simone Bevilacqua. He's only 22 years of age, but he took a stage at the Tour de Langkawi last year. He's a stocky, powerfully built athlete. Had a quick word with him before we started today, and I asked him whether he was va fare per il sprint in my terrible Italian. You can see there the rider from Androni Giocattoli, just trying to get everyone organised to make sure there's no passengers at the back. Everyone must share their work if this breakaway is going to have a chance of survival. And Bevilacqua looked at me and said, easy, easy, which could mean anything for an Italian. I think a lot of the riders probably share his sentiment though. They're not entirely sure how the legs are going at the moment, how they're going to go in a sprint. So it's a question of just feeling themselves out, really. So I think Blake Quick is still in that first group. One of the riders from the star rider in many ways from one of the Australian continental teams, the St George Continental team. So, interesting to see 3 World Tour riders in the breakaway. Often in these races they would leave presence in a breakaway to, if you like, with no disrespect, the lesser teams. But NTT have taken the bull by the horns. Looking for those dark blue jerseys to identify their 3 riders, we understand. I must admit, I've only spotted 2, but the race information I'm looking at suggests that there are 3 riders from NTT in that group. Svengard and Battistella are definitely there, I think. And the gap is beginning to grow. 34 seconds now, with 55 kilometres to go, so rattling the kilometres off. I think the pace has been high so far. Been racing for just over half an hour. And now the sun is beginning to shine. Some of these riders will be better suited to these, well, you have to say extreme weather conditions than others. All of the riders who are racing in the Australian and New Zealand, well, particularly the Australian racing programme that's just come to an end with the Herald Sun Tour, and of course the Tour Down Under, etc., the Cadell Evans Great Ocean Road Race, as well as a number of Criterium races. They'll be pretty well acclimatised to this intense heat. It's not so much the temperature, which is high, it's the humidity here, which is brutal. On the island of Borneo, the third biggest island in the world, and right over on the eastern fringes of it. Beautiful island, very, very friendly place, and very proud, I think, to be hosting this big bike race, shutting off pretty much the entire city centre to allow this race to happen. It's early in the morning here. And it's only the second time that, if you like, the Tour de Langkawi, even though this isn't officially part of the Tour de Langkawi, but it's only the second time that the race has visited the Borneo part of Malaysia. Malaysia itself, if you didn't realise, and I think many people don't, is split down the middle, really, geographically at least, with peninsular Malaysia, where Kuala Lumpur and the more well-known landmarks are, and then a vast tract of land on the northern part of the island of Borneo, neighbouring with Brunei, and that's where we are in Sabah. And this is the capital city of Sabah as well. So 2 of those NTT riders on the front, and I'm going to stick with my estimation of this. I think there are only 2 NTT riders in that group. So I think that Svengard may well be one of them, which would mean that Dylan Sunderland is probably back in the pack, and will be looking after Max Walscheid. We certainly know that Samuele Battistella is there. He is in the front of the race. So there's a nice, friendly, amicable feel to this race. Not just the warmth from the air and the warmth from the side of the road and the supporters who've come out. It's also within the peloton. I think a lot of these riders know each other very well from the Asian circuit. Whether they come from Korea, Thailand, Japan, Kazakhstan, of course. Vino Astana Motors are here. The development team for Astana, led by the controversial Alexander Vinokourov, who's put his name to the team. And a team, once again, Astana, you have to say, that are riding at the moment with a cloud above their names, after their star riders of last couple of years, Alexei Lutsenko and in particular Jakob Fuglsang, have been linked with contact with Dr. Michele Ferrari. That is currently a bit of a storm blowing over and through the cycling world, and entirely bad news for those of us who are invested, I think, like most cycling fans are, in a brighter, cleaner future to the sport. Once again, to hear Astana and by implication Vinokourov's name at least linked with suspicion of doping is far from ideal. But his younger riders, Vino Astana Motors team, they are here. The kit is not totally dissimilar from Astana, a little bit darker blue, and they've yet to show their faces particularly. I haven't spotted too many of them buried in the pack, which is just where you should be if you are intent on winning a bike race. So bit by bit they are threading their way around the northeastern part of this circuit, and will start to bend back in towards town. Does a great big loop out of town to the south, heading in a westerly direction, then kicking around down south, and then gradually edging towards the east and then the northeast, and then back into town and along just inland from the waterfront. And that is Blake Quick in the red of St George.
Okay. Sekali lagi kita ingin
Oh, well, happy to be contradicted. Carter Bettles apparently is the rider in question.
marilah ke sini beramai-ramai memeriahkan perlombaan resort Criterium Round pada hari ini.
And you can see now a lot of that, the bossy ordering of riders round. has actually yielded some tangible benefit in that they are all now sharing the work quite equally. And that is 1 kilometre to go towards the finish line, that red arch, the inflatable arch just over the line, over the road. So 51 kilometres remaining. Last time we had a time gap, it was up to about 35 seconds. I've not heard anything since to suggest that they have been closed. Oh no, there is a rider from Bardiani. It's a situation now, just under 5 laps remaining. Slightly variable information that we're getting about how many riders there are in the breakaway. Initially, the official race feed on Twitter said that it was 17, and then it was 16 on the screen, and now we're hearing 15. I think 15 is slightly more probable, but I haven't managed to get all their numbers just yet, for which I can only apologise. Justin Mottier is one of the riders in the breakaway from the B&B Hotels team. Dylan Sunderland is the second NTT rider. That rider there is Luca Chirico from Androni Giocattoli, and there is Simone Battistella. Monaco is there, Alessandro Monaco from Bardiani, so not Palucchi. Mottier is the rider from B&B Hotels. Tristan Ward representing Bridge Lane. Gilmore in the colours along with his teammate Drake from the ARA Pro Cycling Sunshine Coast team. So Zach Gilmore. And 15 riders in total. I think they sense that they were just beginning to get caught there, or it looked like they might be caught. 2 riders from the St George team, including Blake Quick and his teammate Carter Bettles. And the gap is coming down now, just 13 seconds with 46 kilometres to go. So the work being done by the Izan racing team is beginning to yield some reward. As one of the 2 riders representing the light green colours there of the ARA Pro Racing's Sunshine Coast team, Zach Gilmore and Armani Drake, who isn't scheduled actually, Armani Drake, to ride the Tour de Langkawi. They're working hard. You can see the riders at the front pretty much all down on their drops. Alessandro Monaco from Bardiani CSF Faesani. First time we've seen him working on the front. Here comes Justin Mottier, who is a French rider, nicknamed Bridou. Justin Bridou apparently is a famous French sausage, and that's where he gets his nickname from, Justin Mottier. And still the time gap starts to tumble now, 12 seconds. Closing all the while, so they're doing a good job, but for how much longer can they sustain it? And can they actually close the gap definitively and shut this breakaway group down? Under pressure now, the breakaway group, it's starting to splinter into its constituent parts, and some of the stronger riders have broken away now themselves. So the breakaway group, feeling the presence of the peloton, has split in two, at least for the time being. 5 riders off the front now. But they haven't got away. Looks like the 2 NTT riders might have been caught out by that move. And actually hearing on race radio that the gap has grown. So they've now taken the information off the screen, and I'm hearing that the breakaway group are now 39 seconds up the road with 44 kilometres to go. It's slightly too big, this group. 15 riders is a little bit too big. I think some of the stronger riders are perhaps looking around them and thinking there are too many passengers here, too many riders who are being dragged along, and it looks to me like they're trying to get away and slice this group in half and prize away 6 or 7 of the best. But that's as big as an advantage as the breakaways had since it got away within the first couple of kilometres of today's 80-kilometre stage. Criterium race. I shouldn't call it a stage. It doesn't actually form part of the Tour de Langkawi, which gets underway tomorrow down in Kuching. A flight away from here, further down west along the northern coast of Borneo. And again, it's a circuit race in and around Kuching tomorrow to get the Tour de Langkawi underway. So, Motier. "43 kilometres to go." The gap, or you can see there, the peloton are pretty much still out of sight down that long straight section. And as a result, you can infer yourself the gap is well over 30 seconds at the moment, and the race is pretty stable. Music being cranked up here at the finish line, and bit by bit the finish line here is beginning to fill up with supporters, and the temperature's rising all the while. Only 24 degrees about half an hour ago, but I think you can add another couple of degrees to that. This is hard work, even though it's a relatively short race. Criterium races are always pretty intense. So the B&B Hotels Vital Concept team with 4 riders now sitting on the wheel of Aizan Racing. They do have a rider in the front of the race, Justin Motier. Good to see Pierre Hollande returning in the colours of B&B Vital Concept. His last visit here was as a Europe car rider, where he spent many years, of course, famously winning at the Tour de France. Pierre Hollande, whose career, you could argue, has stalled a little bit since. But he has a little bit of unfinished business, I understand, with the Tour de Langkawi. Attacked perhaps a little bit too early last time he was here on the Genting climb, and wants to try and put that right. So Sunderland sitting on the wheel of Battistella, 2 NTT, the senior riders in the breakaway group, sole representatives of World Tour teams. Matvey Nikitin from the Astana Motors team is there, I just noticed. He's their GC man for this stage race. And on we go, 5 laps remaining. And they do look as though they're working well together. And as you can see on screen, the advantage now as they head in towards the final kilometre of this 4th lap. And towards the next prime. The gap is as big as it's been, 48 seconds. So the work being done by the Aizan racing team from Japan at the moment is entirely in vain. And you can see actually the effort now is beginning to tell on those riders. It's an unequal struggle, just 3 of them against a fairly committed group of 15 in whom pretty much everybody is sharing the work. Carter Bettles, the man from the St George Continental Cycling Team, one of 2 riders. He will, if this group gets away, stays away to the end, he will, I'm sure, be put to the service of Blake Quick, who is the faster, like the man's name suggests, of the 2 riders from St George. And again, Battistella looks interested in taking another prime. He's got a bit of competition. Now this is Blake Quick. This is the first time we've seen Blake Quick, and a little bit of an acceleration there from the man from St George's. He takes the next prime, takes home 500 ringgit, and just adds a little bit to his bank balance, and why not? No, it's just an indication of when he gets going, the young Australian, just how potent a force he is. Just 19 years of age he is. The oldest man in the race. Stuart Shaw there as well, that familiar climbing figure. That is the team of B&B Vital Concept. And the Aizan team, I think, are beginning to run out of firepower, and that felt like it was bigger than a 48 second. And off they go and out onto the circuit again. The halfway point has been reached and breached. 4 laps down, 4 to go. And I think the gap was over a minute now and beginning to grow. If they still have a minute with, let's say 15 kilometres still to go, they might be very, very hard to catch, this group. So in terms of how this race plays out, the next 20 kilometres are quite critical. That is Nikitin, Matvey Nikitin, on the front in the dark blue, handing over to one of the riders from the ARA team. Then comes Alessandro Monaco. You see them all through and off, just very short turns. There's enough of them to share this work. Just gliding up on the left-hand side, putting down the effort, getting to the front, pulling over to the right-hand side. And the good news for the home crowd is there is one representative that we've had finally confirmed now with the Malaysia national team who's made the cut and got themselves in the front 15 riders at the front of the race. and that is Nikmurazwan Zulkifili from the Malaysia team. I hope I pronounced that right, I'm sure I haven't. But it was the best I could do for now. They, of course, have a decent team whose hero is back in the peloton, Anwar Manan, their sprinter who took himself a stage at the Tour de Langkawi, his home race, the prestigious home race, back in 2010, 10 years ago. But his teammate, Zulkifli, is in the breakaway. And the gap's gone up to 1 minute. So here are the riders who are in the breakaway now. Confirmed names for you. NTT's Samuele Battistella. We've seen him competing for Primes, along with his teammate Dylan Sunderland. Then Androni Giocattoli Siremek have the Italian Luca Chirico, I should say. Chirico, get it right third time of asking. Another Italian, Alessandro Monaco, for another Italian pro-continental team, the Bardiani CSF team. He's in the breakaway in the red kit. Frenchman Justin Mottier, we've spoken about him from B&B Hotels Vital Concept, he's there. Then from Team Bridgelane, the Australian team in the light blue, Tristan Ward. The Hong Kong team, the Korean team, Kukyun Kim is in there. Then another Australian continental team with ARA Pro Cycling, Pro Racing Sunshine Coast, Zach Gilmore and Amami Drake are both there. Zach Gilmore in particular has got a very fast finish. Then the SSOIS Miyoji team from China, none of whom are actually Chinese, since the Chinese athletes have been deemed quarantined essentially, so that they are not taking part due to the coronavirus situation in mainland China. There are no Chinese riders here, but a Chinese team represented by, well, a bunch of riders from all across the world, and they have got a rider from Dominic Perez, who's representing them in their colours. Then St George Continental Cycling Team, well, they've got two Australians, Carter Bettles and Blake Quick, the 19-year-old fast finisher who is in that group, and he'd be one of the big favourites, I think, if this breakaway stays away to take victory, especially because he's got a teammate with him to help him. Vino Astana Motors have Yevgeny Fedorov in the breakaway, the tallest of their young group of riders, 4 of whom are eligible for the under-23 competition. Fedorov is one of them. I think Fedorov will probably have his eye on the Tour de Langkawi's climbing stage when that finally gets underway. Team Hong Kong, the Hong Kong national team, Ka Hu Fung is in their colours in the breakaway group. And finally the rider from the Malaysia national team. And that is your 15. So right at the back, that's Zach Gilmore, who's saving his energy a little bit. He's the rider from ARA Pro Racing Sunshine Coast. And there are 36 kilometres to go now. 80 kilometres in total. 54 of them already ticked off, and they've not been hanging about at all at the Resort World Genting Criterium International. Well, that information would suggest that one of the riders has gone back to the pack, or he's had a mechanical. Haven't seen anyone crash, but there were 15 riders for sure in the breakaway group, and now only 14 are listed. So yet to establish just why that's the case, what might have happened. Big drink of water, incredibly important to stay hydrated. These Australian riders will know all about riding in these conditions. Nonetheless, have to get it right, even on a short race like this. Blake Quick there drinking. And still it's the Aizan Racing team from Japan, still with that one rider on the front, not entirely sure who it is. But he's been rooted to the front, that spot at the front of the peloton, and has been allowed absolutely no respite, working incredibly hard at the front, and now seeing the gap grow to well over a minute, 1:05 on your screen. That's the latest information. So one more day tomorrow as the Tour de Langkawi gets underway on the island of Borneo before we reboot and go over to Peninsular Malaysia for stage 2 onwards all the way to the finish on the island of Langkawi, taking in Terengganu and Kuala Lumpur en route. Spectacular finish underneath the Petronas Twin Towers. The race sponsor welcoming the race to their headquarters. As Evgeny Fedorov shares the work on the front now. Dylan Sunderland doing his turn. Drifts off to the left, invites Fedorov to come through. And just a sense there from Sunderland, I think that some of the unity, some of the purpose in the breakaway has just ebbed out of their legs a little bit. He's just trying to encourage them now to get involved once more and to up the pace a little bit. But you can see there's a lot of looking around at the moment and no real sense of purpose and drive. Fluid motion within that group. When they're working hard, they're not looking. They're all understanding that each other's role and function is determined, and that there is commitment as well from the other group, from the other members of the group. $33k remaining then. It's been rapid. These 33k's could be ticked off, you never know, in about 45 minutes. The gap last time we had one, 1:05 over the line. And they're inside the final kilometre now for the 5th lap. When they go out, there will be just 3 remaining. We've seen a handy little battle to try and pick up preem points thus far in this breakaway group. I wonder what will happen this time around. Sharing them out. Don't want any rider in particular to get too greedy. They'll get themselves a bad reputation within that breakaway group. And they have shared them out so far. Last time though, it was Blake Quick, one of the 2 riders from St George Continental Team from Australia, who popped out to grab themselves 500 Malaysian ringgit. And it looks like he might be interested again. Into the barriered section now, a couple of 100 metres to go. They're looking at each other. And this time it's one of the other Australian teams who goes to the front, claims the money. I think it's Tristan Ward who got himself the preem there. Yeah, it was indeed Tristan Ward taking the money. And here comes the peloton, all in team orders, all getting together in little clusters of the same coloured kits. Around about 20 seconds now since they crossed the line. So the gap, I wonder what it's going to be. Yet to get into the barriered section. Could well be a minute, the gap. If not more. Aizan racing now with just 2. They had initially had 3 riders. Still got 3 more laps remaining. Looks like there's more pressure on the breakaway group. So we get that nice little aerial overhead shot from a footbridge. And again, 5 riders have just gone clear. There's a chase, an almighty chase from 2-3 individual riders to try and get across. If that's if that's the final selection or one of the first selections here, then you have to be part of it, otherwise the race can very quickly get away from you. A reaction perhaps to the fact that Vini Zabu have started to come and work at the front of the peloton. Motier looks around, the Frenchman from B&B Hotels Vital Concepts, to see who he's got with him. The Malaysian rider, Zulkifli, is there. Here comes the peloton now from that overhead shot from the footbridge. And you can see two riders now in the lime green and black from Vini Zabu KTM. And that is one of the reasons why I think the time gap has started to come down again, and possibly why the breakaway group has reacted. So Monaco, Battistella, Motier, Fedorov, those four on the front. Then Blake, Sunderland, Zulkifli. Good ride from him. It's doing well in good company there. Some of the strongest riders to the fore, and he's holding his own and contributing. And again, pressure being exerted at the front. And it's coming from Zach Gilmore. Good ride from Gilmore. Forcing a reaction from Bardiani CSF's Alessandro Monaco, who's on his wheel. So all that harmony is completely dissolved in the breakaway group. And those three riders now appear to have broken free of the rest of the breakaway. There's bits and pieces all across the road. Some of them, I think, already might well have been swept up by the peloton out of sight of our cameras. Ah, now that's the counter reaction. That's the front of the race. I did wonder. So those three are actually distanced. Very different conditions that Battistella is riding in from when he won the Under-23 World Road Race Championship. And that horrible, horrible weather conditions in Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. It couldn't be more different here in the island of Borneo. But he's getting into pursuit mode now, realising that he's fed up with the games that are being played in that breakaway group and just wants to get away and ride his own race, and making a good fist of it now. But 26 kilometres to go. It'd be an almighty effort. I think he's probably, Battistella, just considering this to be a bit of a training hit out to see what those legs are capable of. And on this evidence, they are in good shape. Bit by bit, he's being pegged back though. Looks like it's Kim from the Korean team, who amongst others, including that pair from St George, beginning to get across. 14 riders in the leader group, but the leader group itself has been blown to bits under pressure at the moment from Simone Battistella. Well, that's not Zach Gilmore, that is, I'm pretty sure, Samuele Battistella from the NTT team. Looking across now, perhaps realising that he can't ride on his own all the way, but he's, in a way, he's done his job, because he's prized away some 7 or 8 riders, maybe more, and they are the strongest. Zulkifli being one of them. He goes to the front now from the Malaysia national team, looks around. And this is a delicate moment for the breakaway, because they've all been riding very hard now for the last 5-10 minutes. in response to Samuele Battistella. None of them could get across, but equally he couldn't quite get away. And now they are just coasting a little bit. And the gap that they had grown will start to shrink pretty quickly unless they get organised now, which they're doing. No time to hang around as Mottier does his turn and gets to the front. Don't think it's 14 riders any longer. Both the NTT riders, though, still there, including Dylan Sunderland, Battistella's teammate. So the cream in this breakaway group, I think, beginning a little bit to rise to the top. I think the other ARA Pro Racing Sunshine Coast team rider, it's not Zach Gilmer anymore. I think Amami Drake is the sole surviving representative of that team at the front of the race. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 riders, I make it, which would make sense. I think we saw 3 dropping away, including Alessandro Monaco from the Bardiani team, as well as Zach Gilmore and one other. So after all that, it's pretty much as you were. 103 the gap, and instead of 14, 15 men, I think there are just 12 now at the front of the race. So just over 2 laps remaining. They are heading up towards the coast now, where they will swing round left-handed fairly soon and through the Flamme Rouge, line themselves up to go through the start-finish line for the last time before the bell lap, racing for 1 hour and 12 minutes, and they've done best part of 60 kilometres in that time, so they've not been hanging around. Carter Bettles doing his turn on the front for his senior teammate, senior in quality perhaps and potential in terms of the race win, Blake Quick, if not in age. He's only 19 is Blake Quick, but he is probably the best chance of St George riding to victory here. And now it is beginning to get a little bit critical. Vini Zapu have come to help the Aizan's racing team, but it's still those 2 teams, and the gap, although it's only 1 minute, will still take a little bit of closing with the quality of riders in that big 12-man breakaway group. It's a slightly more manageable group, you sense, at the front of the race at the moment, and they're working well together. Every single one of these riders has to contribute. The more that try and sit on and play games, the more that the unity will be chipped away at within this group. But at the moment they're all playing their part, including Kahu Fung from the Hong Kong team. That is Mottier from B&B Hotels. And this man here is Carter Bettles from the St George Continental team. Mottier. Very distinctive kit, isn't it? Sunderland. Dylan Sunderland, Australian, for the South African team. I did a little glance there of the 9 prodigiously talented Blake Quick. And these are the 3 who've dropped away, including Zach Gilmore, including Monaco, and one other rider. I think it must be Dominic Perez, unless he's still there. Oh, there is Dominic Perez, actually. National champion of the Philippines in that white kit. A few national champions here. The Serbian national champion, the Japanese national road race champion. Blake Quick, he's a tall, rangy figure, isn't he? Looks very good on a bike though, powerfully composed. Coming through on his wheel then, Amami Drake, the only representative now of the ARA Pro Racing team. Then comes Fedorov, then Mottier, then Luca Chirico, then Perez in that white jersey. And we have just over 2 circuits remaining now. through the Flamme Rouge, they start to head towards the finish line, where they will compete for the penultimate prime before the bell lap, which is the last prime, of course, and then the big finish. The question is, will it be a big bunch finish, or will it be contested amongst this 11-man breakaway group, the remainder of a bigger breakaway group that at the time was up to 16 riders, as Fedorov just gets out of the saddle to take his position on the wheel of the man in front. And does his turn on the front. Replacing Dylan Sunderland. Sunderland's teammate Battistella at the back then at the moment. In fact, it's looking pretty cool and collected. Samuele Battistella won the under-23 national road race in not uncontroversial circumstances. Nothing of his making, of course. He was the recipient, however, of, could you call it ill fortune of Niels Eekhoff, the Dutch rider who crossed the line first and was then disqualified. Little battle there between Zulkifli and Fedorov, and I think Zulkifli might just have got there first, the Malaysian rider, to take that prime. Although the commissaires have very swiftly contradicted me and given it to Evgeny Fedorov. Yeah, going back to the under-23 national World Road Race Championship, Niels Eekhoff, the Dutch rider, we thought at the time had won it quite brilliantly, but it turns out he'd taken a tow on a team car some, I think it was 100 kilometres from the finish line, quite a substantial tow, quite a grievous offence that the commissaires deemed worthy of his exclusion or his disqualification for the race. Problem is, they didn't tell him until he'd finished the race, won it in inverted commas, at least he thought he'd won it, and was heading for the podium when he was eventually, after a lot of toing and froing, disqualified. All of which meant that after almost an hour of waiting, Samuele Battistella was handed the rainbow jersey and the gold medal. So 2 laps remaining then. 20 kilometres of the Criterium International here in Kota Kinabalu to go. Bottles being handed out by the side of the road. No team cars here to supply the riders, but every time they come through the start-finish line they can take on board bottles or gels or whatever it is they need. And they do need them, believe me. Very, very testing conditions for endurance athletes or any sort of activity really that gets the heart rate up in these conditions. The humidity is at times stifling here. Of course, if you're represented here in the red and white by Luca Chirico, they have got Luca Paccioni back in the pack in the peloton, who's a sprinter, good sprinter, and is a former winner of a stage here at the Tour de Langkawi. One of a number, actually. And they are, without exception now, all in the peloton itself. Artem Ovechkin, who is not just a former stage winner, not on a sprint stage, but on a mountaintop finish. But he's also a former overall winner of the Tour de Langkawi in the general classification. He won the race in 2018. A not uncontroversial rider, Artem Ovechkin, another rider, sadly, with a stage winner, Bevilacqua from the Vini Zabu KTM team. He took a stage last year. And then Riccardo Minali from Nippo Delco Provence, of whom we have seen next to nothing so far. Minali took 2 stages in 2018. They're in that light blue kit that we have not seen in the breakaway and we have not seen towards the front of the peloton. Now, that is often a very good sign. So watch out for a big rush from the Nippo Delco Provence team, the French famous pro-continental team. They have got in Riccardo Minali, a 2-time stage winner in 2018 of stages at the Tour de Langkawi. And then in the colours of Bardiani CSF, Matteo Pelucchi, formerly of I Am Cycling. He's a double stage winner when he was riding for Androni Giocattoli at the Tour de Langkawi last year. Add to that, the oldest man in the peloton, Stuart Shaw, for ARA Pro Racing Sunshine Coast. And that's your lot, former stage winners who could yet feature in today's finish. So the tension will start to go up a notch or two. So Izan Cycling still committed with 4 riders on the front and still with Vini Zabu KTM on their wheels. It's an unchanging scene. Another team seem to have moved themselves up, and I think I'm catching a little glimpse now, I am, of the Bardiani CSF team in that purple and lime green. They've got at least 2 riders just sitting on the wheels of the Japanese riders in the blue. And they will be riding for Minali. Sorry, Palucchi. So many Italian riders. The Italians have done so well here, better than any other nation at the Tour de Langkawi historically. And one thinks of Andrea Guardini, who was the consummate stage winner. I think it's 24 stages in total that he picked up at the Tour de Langkawi. He's not here any longer, but his host of compatriots are. Whether it's Palucchi, Paccioni, Minali, seems to be everywhere you look there's a fast Italian finisher. But Max Walscheid, even though he's never raced the Tour de Langkawi, let alone won a stage, might well be the man to look out for from the NTT team. 2 of his stronger teammates are in the breakaway as an insurance policy for NTT should the break not be caught. But Walscheid has been invisible so far, buried in the middle of the pack. Pretty sure he'd be disappointed, Max Walscheid, if he comes away from 10 days of racing in Malaysia without a stage win or a race win at some point at some time, and now might as well be a good enough time as any to get things started.
Daripada Australia. Dan sprint yang kedua yang pakai number 94 iaitu tempat daripada sprint yang kedua iaitu pelopor yang pakai number 94 iaitu pelopor daripada pasukan KSPO Professional daripada Korea iaitu King.
Well, if they have a minute's advantage going into the final lap, they're going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to catch. So the timed gap now is absolutely critical as they start gradually to head towards the Flamme Rouge and the Bell Lap. Could well be that this breakaway group, as big as it was when he got away, might have sprung a surprise in this Criterium International and might be about to take the honours, but I think it's too early to say just yet. And as ever, the time gaps are critical on this. But I think it's very telling that Aizan Cycling Racing Team are still on the front, and if that were the case, that the gap had gone out or that the peloton deemed it to be unmanageable now, I think we'd have seen Bardiani and Vini Zappu start to take things up and help them and actually work on the front. As another little attack goes off the front. And it's Carter Bettles, smart move. Now you can see Blake Quick just looking to see which wheel he's going to pick as riders try to get across to Carter Bettles. Perfect move. If you've got 2 riders in the breakaway group, you might as well use them. Carter Bettles launches a long range attack with 13 kilometres to go. Aizan Racing Team, those blue jerseys still working on the front.
World champion under 23
Classic move then from St George Continental Cycling Team. Carter Bettles hitting out from a long way out. Blake Quick, they've been caught, but it's all good. He's tiring out the opposition, and it's all to the advantage of their ace in the pack, and that is this man here. Blake Quick in conversation. Now, interestingly, he's in conversation with one of the riders there, Dylan Sunderland, I think. Oh no, Samuele Battistella from NTT. And they will have felt each other out over the last hour or so of racing, and they'll be determining tactics now as they look at who the stronger riders are. You can see Mottier wants to be part of that conversation too, and the bigger riders seem to be trying to hatch a plan here. St George and NTT, both with 2 men in the breakaway, and that could be significant as the tactics unfold over the next 12 kilometres and how this breakaway eventually breaks apart, because it will break apart under pressure not only from the peloton but internally. If they start to sense that they have victory within them, then that itself can become a problem. Closer they get to the reality of a breakaway success, the harder it is for any one rider to commit to the front. And that is where it's so important to have two riders from each team in the breakaway group, because one can sacrifice himself for the other. It's as simple as that. Whereas if you're on your own, then you've got to be doubly smart. Jericho is one such, he's on his own. But Bettles, he's already hit out once, he's working hard on the front. There we go, that's the next time gap. We haven't had a time gap for a while, 24 seconds, so they're closing hard now, and that's really good work by the Aizan Racing team. And I have to say, that's the reason why we haven't seen any of the other teams come to the fore and help them out. They are doing it on their own, partly because of the speed fluctuations, I guess, at the front with the breakaway group, but they've done a sterling amount of work there. Now, if that's the case, 24 seconds, expect to see more long-range hit-outs now in the final circuit from the breakaway group, as they sense that the end is nigh. Still Carter Bettles working hard on the front. Jericho from Androni Giocattoli. Through they come now. 1 kilometre to go to hear the bell, and then out on the final 10-kilometre lap. Pace is only going to get higher all the way now. This is the real business end of this criterium. They have been flying round. Almost no let-up. It's a nice short criterium. Sometimes these races can fall into a bit of a lull in the middle. Not really been the case on this one. They've attacked it right from the gun. The race organisers scheduled 2 hours for this race. Well, it ain't going to be 2 hours. They've been racing for an hour and a half now, and it's nearly done, just 10k to go. Ah, look, little stalling there. Motier seizes his opportunity. The attack has come from Blake Quick. He's going to try and win himself a preem, and will he carry on or will he sit up? We'll see who's coming across. So he gets himself another preem. So Blake Quick doubles up his money. He takes the bell, 10 kilometres to go, and he looks around, and I think he's wise enough, albeit at the age of 19, to realise that there's no point in just carrying on. He'll get caught, whatever. So his only chance might come from getting back into the breakaway and holding on. Although, having said that, he took a little swig there, and now he's pushing on again. And now we finally have a different team sharing the work, and it's Bardiani CSF with one rider who has gone to the front now. Vini Zapu lurking, ready to do their share of work. They all take the bell. Blake Quick takes the second preem. The breakaway gets back together, even if they're not particularly organised. The gap is around about 20-25 seconds, I would suggest. And it is Zulkifli from the Malaysian national team who tries to launch a really long, audacious move. Good for him. Attacking ride from the Malaysian rider. That is precisely why he is in this bike race. To show himself off to his home country, to impress by his attacking nature and his strength. He has lived with some of the best riders in this peloton very comfortably, it seems, in the breakaway group. Now 9 kilometres to go. Two teams sharing the work to try and bring this back. How long before we see Vini Zabu riding on the front, looking after perhaps Simone Bevilacqua, who would be the obvious rider, I think, to ride to success for them. Hard to see from that distance, but looks like one rider is hit out on their own, and bits and pieces of the breakaway group are about to be caught. Carter Bettles, I think, being one of them. They're the two riders from NTT? I think they are. Dylan Sunderland and Samueli Battistella. And it's the Kazakh rider with a Russian name, Evgeny Fedorov, who has gone off the front. Impressive ride from him. He's not a sprinter, Fedorov. He is a time trialist. Very good one, actually. Evgeny Fedorov. He's the under-23 Asian time trial champion, just 19 years of age, and a rider of that capacity, that's precisely the right move. Just try and see if you can hit out for a long one. You can see his position on the bike is excellent, even though he's been out in that breakaway group and working pretty hard for the last hour and a half. He's still got lovely poise on a bike. So Bardiani, one rider dedicated to the front of the peloton. Still Asiana showing willing, sitting on his wheel. The Dayglow lime green colours of Vini Zabu. And Nippo Delco Provence riding for Riccardo Minali are beginning to show their colours towards the front of the race. NTT though, I think those two riders from the breakaway, Battistella and Sunderland, have been called back to try and look after Max Walscheid as best they can, with the proviso that they have been in the breakaway for the last hour and a half and they've been working hard. 8k to go now. ASEAN racing team take over again, but they've only got one man up there now. I'm not entirely sure, if I'm totally honest, which rider they are riding for in the sprint, if indeed that is the explanation for the amount of work that they've done. Good ride though this from Fedorov. Clear grey tarmac between him and what remains of the breakaways, some of whom have been caught already, others of whom will still to be caught, I think. So remember, this isn't actually an official part of the Tour de Langkawi, which gets underway tomorrow. This is just an opener, if you like. Massive fireworks display and a team presentation down here last night, right in the middle of town. Received with great warmth and interest by the local community here, who are unfamiliar with bike racing on these roads. 3 riders still chasing on, 4 riders trying to chase across to Fedorov, and getting there bit by bit as Fedorov's powers begin to wane. I think he will be caught by the remains of the breakaway and then the peloton, and they're right on him now. So with 8 kilometres to go, it looks like the race is just about to come back together again. Sorry, forgive me, we go forward to Fedorov. That was a group of breakaway riders, perhaps the last group of breakaway riders to be caught. And Fedorov, who kicked out with just under 10 kilometres to go, is still on his own. And actually, the peloton is out of sight, but it's a long way, even regardless of the lead that he has. Even if he were to take a lead like that into the final 2 kilometres, it would still be in doubt as to whether or not he could hold on. A gap, an advantage like that, when the legs begin to blow and go, can disappear in a trice. All those fresh legs in the peloton. Think of the teams like Nippo Delco Provence or like NTT, most of them who haven't been in the breakaway. They've been just keeping their powder dry, ready to unleash it in the final 3, 4, 5 kilometres. And that is when you'll see the gap advantage that breakaway riders, even solo breakaway riders have, can just evaporate. It's the sheer algebra of bike racing. As the equation narrows, it becomes less and less likely that the lone leader, particularly a lone leader, can hold on as he tires, and the fresher legs only now start to really work. It's an unequal struggle, and that is the beauty of bike racing, and it's why it makes it special, particularly special when someone solos all the way to the line. And all you can say at this point is that Evgeny Fedorov, the 19-year-old under-23 Asian time trial champion, is definitely giving himself something of a chance, and he's certainly at the very least making everyone work hard behind him. It's a very committed ride. I think that might be the peloton just coming around the corner. No, I'm not sure it is. So still no sight. We have not seen them all in the same picture yet. Still quite early in the morning here, 10 past 10, heat is getting up. The whole caravan, the whole entourage of the Tour de Langkawi up sticks and takes a flight down the coast to Kuching, where the race will resume or start in earnest, the Tour de Langkawi tomorrow. Vino Astana Motors now, and that is the front of the peloton, and as you can see, it ain't going to work for Fedorov. If he was perhaps within the final kilometre now he'd have a chance, but I think he'll be caught in the next couple of kilometres or so. But he did what he could, and don't think Vino Astana Motors have got a sprinter they can really match up against the likes of Walscheid and Pelucchi, Paccioni and Minali. So it was probably the only card that they could play. Get him in a breakaway and then allow him to launch a long-range attack, and he's done just that. And he's been out there for some 3 or 4 kilometres on his own. But they're closing hard now. And then we'll see the big sprinters teams then try and get themselves organised. SSO IOS Myoji cycling team, they might yet play a role. The Chinese team, Georgios Bouglas, their Greek sprinter, I don't think we've mentioned him. Terengganu, they'll be interested in getting Harif Saleh into position, the Malaysian sprinter. What a lovely result that would be. We've seen a good showing from Zulkifli from the Malaysian national team in the breakaway. How the locals here would love to see a local victory. So 4K to go, and it all comes back together as Fedorov is caught. There will be opportunities perhaps between here and the finish line for other riders to go off the front if the pace isn't too high, and that is why the sprinters teams do like to keep the pace as high as they can, sustainably manage it to deter anyone from creating a problem like a powerful long-range attack to which they then have to respond, tiring themselves out. So it's a delicate balance at the front of the peloton now. It's just holding together somehow and keeping safe as well in the hurly-burly of a big bunch sprint, which is what we're going to be treated to at the end of the Criterium International here. 4K to go. They hit the coast. Up now in a northerly direction before sweeping round to the left, heading back in towards the west. So total change in the teams that you're starting to see coming towards the front now. As for the first time, NTT in the peloton start to move towards the front.
Thank you so much to all the medias, local medias, international medias, print medias, electronic medias, Kota. Terima kasih mengucapkan bersama-sama.
That's the Hong Kong team on the front now, working hard. The Malaysian national team as well. I think probably with Anwar Manan himself riding second wheel. I know maybe it's not him. Then comes Team Bridge Lane from Australia, won 2 of those jerseys at least, if not more. Peeling off now. Did what he could. The pace is high, 3 kilometres to go. The big teams though still really to show themselves. It is a waiting game now, but it's getting tenser as the Bridge Lane team take things up now. Alistair Christie-Johnston could be their man for the day. He is wearing the number 1 on his back. They've had Tristan Ward in the breakaway, and he will be put to the test to see what he can offer, try and ride out a victory here. That would be some result for them. Launching a big attack now, going long range. I think the Bridge Lane tactic was to actually do this rather than ride for the sprint potentially. I think that's a Bridge Lane jersey, is it? So the long range attack comes at about 2 kilometres to go, I should say, excuse me. And now inside the Flamme Rouge, the final kilometre then, the big bunch then lurking as the sole attacker, trying to ride away from this concerted effort. But even within the last 200-300 metres, when the big sprinters open up their big guns and get going, you can see his shrinkingly small advantage of what, 20 metres will just evaporate. Now NTT are on the front, and Max Walscheid, for the first time we see him, the big German there in third wheel, perfectly placed now with about 500 metres to go. Into the barriered section, there's the big German, third wheel as they come roaring round that sweeping left-hander. Here they come now, 300 metres to go, and he's still got 2 lead-up men to work with, patiently waiting and waiting. Delco Marseille Provence alongside him, and Riccardo Minali looking good, perfectly placed, as a big attack comes from Matteo Pelucchi on the right-hand side. Pelucci now trying to sprint along the barriers on the right-hand side. The man from Bardiani, Max Walscheid on the left-hand side. Walscheid, Pelucci, and it was tight between those two. I think possibly that Walscheid was just edged out there on the line, and Victory has been denied him, but we'll have to wait and see. That was very, very close indeed. Some of the riders opting for the right-hand side of the road and those barriers, others on the left-hand side. That was where Walscheid allowed his lead-out team to go, and that is where they placed him. Was it the right decision ultimately, and did he get there? We'll have to wait for the photo. So we'll have to wait to get a replay of that finish to determine exactly who has won. Difficult to read from the body language. You didn't get a shot of the riders celebrating or otherwise. Normally the riders themselves know exactly who's won and who's lost. As under pressure from that final speed of this Criterium, then the peloton just broken into its constituent parts just rolls over. Everyone has completed it safely, no crashes, which is one thing. Good weather, that's another thing. Dry roads, perfect conditions, and a wonderful Criterium. The only thing we don't know is who won it. They'll be pouring over the photo finish, I think.
Rangkap CEO kita untuk mengiringi tetamu-tetamu kehormat ke kemah holding room kita dulu sementara kita menunggu keputusan rasmi daripada komisar kita.
Well, there's a man who probably knows, or probably trying to find out in the orange t-shirt there, the technical director of the race, Graham Jones, former winner of, former participant of the Tour de France. Back in the late 1980s. So, I think the photo was between Matteo Palucchi of Bardiani CSF and Max Walscheid, and I've got a feeling Palucchi won, but we'll just have to wait and see. It might well have been someone else who just crept into the frame at the end. Riders who've been in the breakaway, keeping each other company now. And completing their 80 kilometres. Ride back to the hotels. They've all been based down here the last couple of days. Have a shower, get on an aeroplane and head to the start tomorrow of the Tour de Langkawi in Kuching. To finish in second place behind Max Walscheid. Palucchi actually relegated to fourth in the end. Blake Quick, what a ride from him. He was aggressive, he was in the breakaway, and he managed to get a third place. An excellent ride from him, so that's the podium. So huge success there for Harif Seller, who is in second place. Blake Quick, very eye-catching performance. Palucchi edged out. Jérémy Lecroix from to pick up when the Tour de Langkawi gets underway tomorrow. On a fairly tight rein, and as a result it was subjected to repeated attacks from various different riders. The Preems were interesting to watch as well. Riders just chinning off the front to add to their pocket money that they'll take away from Malaysia. And then after the catch we saw a couple of attempts to get away, all in vain of course, and a furiously tightly contested bunch sprint won by the World Tour sprinter Max Walscheid. Line Max Walscheid from NTT winning.
Ni. Bagi berhenti yang pintu gerbang tu.
Pintu gerbang.
Bagi push shot dia.
Ya Dan.
Jaga ni motor polis nak
Kamera punya, kamera punya. Ya. Nah. Tutup. Nak cek punya. Tengok nak ni.
Baiklah hadirin. Dengan itu majlis dengan segala hormatnya menjemput Yang Berhormat Kung Jin Z, Menteri Belia dan Sukan Sabah, bersama-sama dengan Yang Berusaha Puan Rama dengan semua tetamu-tetamu kehormatan lain untuk berada di atas pentas bagi kita menyempurnakan acara penyampaian hadiah kita pada hari ini untuk The Resort World Genting Criterium International di Kota Kinabalu.
Kita press giving dulu
Ada audio? Ada audio belum?
Baik, Komisar rasmi sudah pun berada di tengah kami dan kami akan mengumumkan secara rasmi bagi pemenang-pemenang Resort World Genting Kota Kinabalu 2020 Malaysia International Criterium Race.
Alright, are the media photographers ready? Is everything all set? Kamera semua sudah terpacak dengan kukuh dan mantapnya. Kita mulakan sekarang. Baiklah, kita mulakan dengan tempat ketiga. Third place for the Resort World Genting Criterium International Kota Kinabalu Circuit. Please give this rider a big hand from St. George Continental Cycling Team, Blake Quick.
Dipersilakan Blake Quick.
Indeed, he is very, very quick.
Ya, very quick. Dia juga berjaya menduduki dua prime sprint tadi di tempat yang pertama. Dan sekarang ini menduduki tempat yang ketiga. 80 km.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for the second rider who is going to come up on stage? Let me tell you, he is one of our local rider. Yes! So please make sure you give this rider a big hand. Daripada Terengganu Inc. TSG Cycling Team, Muhammad Harif Saleh.
Muhammad Harif Saleh.
Mat, nama glamour dia Mat.
Nama glamour Mamat.
Mamat.
Nama manja.
Tahniah Mamat.
Tahniah Mamat.
Start je dah naik pentas dah. Semoga banyak applause. A rider from NTT Pros Cycling Team, Maximilian Richard Balcher.
Maximilian Richard daripada pasukan NTT Pro Cycling Team.
Dengan ketinggiannya 2 meter, 1.99. Actually, he is the tallest rider in this edition.
Wow.
Believe it or not. He is a sprinter.
Ya.
Alright, kita bagi peluang untuk pelumba-pelumba kita sesi bergerak dahulu.
Hai, jauh jalan. Aku nak tarik.
Tepukan untuk pemenang-pemenang untuk Resort World Genting Criterium International. And then we want to invite our VVIPs to take photos with our winners. Kita jumpa
Okay.
tetamu-tetamu kehormat untuk bergambar bersama-sama dengan pemenang-pemenang kita. Okey. Baiklah, majlis juga ingin mengambil kesempatan ini untuk menyampaikan sedikit cenderahati kepada Yang Berhormat Tuan Pung Jin Z, Menteri Belia dan Sukan Sabah yang akan disampaikan oleh Yang Berusaha Encik Syahazrin Abdul Hamid, COO Petronas Lentor di Langkawi 2020. Kita juga menjemput yang berbahagia SR Tuan Haji Ishak bin Ismail, Pengerusi Pharma Malaysia, untuk diberikan cenderahati. Dan seterusnya, cenderahati yang akan disampaikan oleh Yang Berbahagia Datuk Zainal Abidin, Yang Razali, Ketua Pengarah Pharma Malaysia. Beri sedikit cenderahati kepada Yang Berusaha Puan Ramona binti Muhammad Razali, Timbalan Ketua Setiap Usaha Strategi KPL. Baiklah, seterusnya, hadirin yang saya hormati sekalian, apa yang akan dapat kita saksikan sekarang ialah lintas hormat daripada pasukan polis Diraja Malaysia diketuai oleh PSP Sahibi bin Hussein dengan kekuatan anggota 190 orang pegawai dan petugas. Tepukan untuk polis Diraja Malaysia, hadirin saya hormati sekalian. Terima kasih. Terima kasih abang-abang polis, abang-abang strat saya. Semuanya terima kasih untuk ucapan.
Baik, terima kasih ucapkan kepada pemenang-pemenang dan juga tetamu-tetamu kehormat. Kita teruskan dengan lintas hormat kita. Berikan sorakan dan sokongan anda. Lintas hormat Polis Diraja Malaysia.
Terima kasih kepada anggota-anggota yang bertugas dan juga akan bertugas. 190 orang pegawai dan anggota semuanya diketuai oleh PSP Sahibi bin Hussein.
oleh Diraja Malaysia daripada negeri Sabah dan juga Bukit Aman.
Ya, terima kasih. Kita jemput tetamu-tetamu berhormat untuk kembali ke kemah. Dan sebentar saja lagi kita ada visi bersama rider. Terima kasih kepada Tourism Sabah, kepada Kerajaan Negeri Sabah, kepada semua rakyat Sabah, kepada tetamu-tetamu berhormat yang sangat-sangat gembira dan berbesarhati menerima kami di sini. Thank you so much. Yang berhormat.
Terima kasih teman-teman hormat semuanya. Kita jumpa lagi.
Kita mengharapkan dapat berjumpa semua keluarga-keluarga di Sabah.
Ya.
Tahun hadapan insya-Allah.
Insya-Allah.
Baiklah, dengan itu saya Nurul Haris ataupun Titi bersama-sama dengan pasangan saya
Musairi bin Musa. Terima kasih juga diucapkan kepada terutama sekali pada Resort World Genting Kota Kinabalu 2020 Malaysia International Criterium Race dan juga penaja-penaja kita yang turut menyemarakkan dalam acara kita Criterium di Kota Kinabalu.
terima kasih kepada KDS, kepada MMC, kepada KLCC dan juga Putrajaya Holding. Akhir kata tingkatkan Putus Sukan Negara Sahut Cabaran Dunia Majukan Sukan Berbasikal untuk Malaysia. Kita jumpa lagi.
Baik, kita jumpa lagi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye-bye.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
ET represented in that front group, Samuele Battistella, in the premium. Yeah, it was indeed Battistella, winner of the third sprint. And out he goes now with 5. So it was probably the only card that they could play. Get him in a breakaway and then allow him to launch along. Then comes Team Bridge Lane from Australia, won 2 of those jerseys at least, if not more. Now with about 500 metres to go into the barriered section. There's the big German third wheel as they come roaring, patiently waiting and waiting. Of this criterium, then the peloton just broken into its constituent parts. Just to recap of the order across the line, Max Walchard for
Check,
NTT
check.
winning.
Okay. Mic ni belakang. Dah. Test.
Maud Harif Saleh.
Baiklah, seperti yang dapat kita saksikan sebentar tadi, nampaknya baiklah hadirin yang saya hormati sekalian, nampaknya sebentar tadi dapat kita saksikan salah seorang pelumba negara daripada pasukan TSG. Testing 1.
Happy to finish the first race on the season. on the top step of the podium.
How did you work it out? You had two teammates in the breakaway. They were very active, and then regrouping. How was the leader?
Huh? Okay.
Yeah, I think the key today was
Test 1 2 3 1 2 3. Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera, salam hormat, salam penuh ceria dari kami di Kota Kinabalu, Sabah untuk Criterium race. So we're going to Criterium.
two guys in front are probably the strongest in the group, so we had always all cards on the table and played their well.
Test, okay.
And even when they came back from the breakaway, they both participated really well in the lead out, so I think we did a really good job overall.
So now with this.
Baiklah hadirin yang saya hormati sekalian, nampaknya dapat kita saksikan sebentar tadi seorang pelumba daripada NTT, daripada Pro Tour Team telah berjaya menamatkan perlumbaan Resort World Genting Criterium International Kota Kinabalu race ini di tempat pertama. Memang telah pun dijangkakan pelumba daripada pasukan NTT akan menamatkan perlumbaan dengan begitu gemilang, dan dengan menyaksikan seorang pelumba daripada pasukan TSG juga diharap dapat menyuntik semangat pelumba-pelumba lain, khususnya pelumba-pelumba tempatan untuk lebih
Second, are you happy
lagi
with that?
sekali.
What do you think of the winner?
Boleh anytime. Okay. Itu dia hadirin penonton yang saya hormati sekalian. Dapat kita saksikan sebentar tadi pelumba daripada pasukan NTT, Max Valchel, yang berdiri dengan ketinggiannya 2 meter. Iaitu pelumba tertinggi di dalam perlumbaan Petronas Letua di Langkawi 2020 ini, berjaya menamatkan perlumbaan di tempat pertama. He is the champion for this the Resort World Genting Criterium International Race di Kota Kinabalu. Dan dengan adanya Harif Saleh ataupun pelumba daripada TSG mendapat tempat kedua antara podium finisher kita pada kali ini, dapat menyuntik semangat kepada pelumba-pelumba lain, khususnya pelumba tempatan, untuk lebih berdaya saing untuk memenangi dalam peringkat-peringkat yang lain, khususnya dalam Petronas LTDL 2020 nanti. Baiklah, setakat sini saja highlights untuk Petronas Letua di Langkawi 2020 edisi ke-25. Saya Nur Alis Kiki. Pastikan anda bersama kami lagi esok di hari dan waktu yang sama. Jumpa lagi.
Questions, anyone? Last chance.
So far so good.
No, then we are okay for today.
Tadi tu okey dah tu. Okey. Ada interview tapi kita try dapat apa yang kita boleh ambil je sebab dia orang dah pergi press conference. Nak ni cabling tak ni?
Bawa dia ke sini lah kan?
Bawa dia ke sini sebab ni cabling ni.
Macam biasa